Hi guys, that's week 1 done of the latest season of Mamemeister's High Score Kerfuffle. And last week we were playing Parodius, a choice from me, released by Konami in 1990. I'd not played much before this week, and I really enjoyed my time with the game. Don't let the cutesy graphics fool you, this is a hardcore shmup, very much continuing in the Gradius vein and will punish those inexperienced. Like many shmups, it takes a bit of learning where the enemies are coming from. The first tricky section is the bit with the dancing lady, where you have to slip under her foot a couple of times. This is also a point where the rank system becomes quite apparent. If you get here powering up your ship without dropping a life, then penguins appear, making your life that bit more difficult. Die, and the penguins won't be there. Rank is affecting things throughout the game, and this is an unfortunate feature of the games of this era, making them more challenging the better you do, as another strategy to limit playtime and squeeze as many pennies out of you as possible. Beyond the dancing lady is the maze level, which is the next point to require knowing where to go, as you can end up getting stuck in a dead end and dying. I was pretty pleased with myself once I worked this out, and when you know what to do, it's actually pretty easy. If you do learn the game, then the first 3 levels are quite doable. The major difficulty I found was with level 4. It steps up the difficulty quite a bit, and I only got past it once, and that wasn't even my best score. So overall, a very positive week for me, and there were plenty of others enjoying it too. But as always, it's not for everyone, and both Colin and Paul didn't really enjoy it.
So last week I said I'd feature the MSX version of Parodius, and here it is. It's where the series began. And so, you know, unlike the arcade game, which is a 1990s or 1990 arcade game, you know, on fairly powerful hardware, you know, we're 2 years earlier on hardware that had already been out for a period of time. So, you know, there's no way you're going to get that same nice cartoony graphical effect that you see in the arcade game. But this game really sort of sowed the seeds for the subsequent games in the series. Many of the, you know, features here are things that did get continued in the game. You know, with the concept generally being the big one. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of graphics, I think it looks pretty nice. I mean, the sprites are colourful, fairly detailed. Some of the sprites, you see the penguin just appear there, are kind of monochrome, which is probably the worst of the looking sprites, and it actually makes them a bit more difficult to see. Another thing is this game is far from easy. You know, many times I've died pretty quickly. So yeah, not doing too bad here. We're kind of getting up to the mid-level boss. Just trying to survive as long as I can. So yeah, this guy's head, and there's, I don't know, snot and bubbles coming out of his nose and mouth. I think we're doing right now. So yeah, I mentioned that the sprites are quite nice. The character moves quite smoothly, but the scrolling, as you see now, we're moving again, is a bit choppy, which kind of lets it down slightly, because, you know, this is a 1988 game, and, you know, 16-bit machines were either, you know, already available or just around the corner. So, you know, 8-bit games really had to be kind of best in class really at this point. And so, you know, playing this in 2021, I think it's fairly decent. I mean, this boss here looks pretty good, I would say. And you know, we've got all the power-ups, just like in Gradius. You obviously don't have the text describing which ones which. You have to kind of remember that. But anyone who's played Gradius enough will know you know the ordering of those power-ups. So yeah, this boss is very similar to the one in the arcade game, the penguin with the kind of smaller penguins rotating around him, firing bullets and lobbing these bottles at you. I've not actually killed this guy. I think I just had to kind of shoot past the shoot through the penguins. Have we killed it? Yeah, it looks like it's dead, doesn't it? And so yeah, it's got the Gradius power-ups. You know, you see we've got one of the options here. I can't remember exactly how many more options you can have. I don't think it's quite as many as the arcade. But you know, that's obviously due to limitations of the hardware. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this up now. Overall, I would say this is an interesting game. You know, well worth a look, especially if you've got, you know, an MSX emulator or Mister configured ready to go. Because it is a different game to the arcade game. And if you're a fan of 8-bit shmups, I would say you could certainly do a lot worse. I mean, we had Twin Eagle on the NES, and you know, it's not going to get much worse than that, I would say. So yeah, let's go take a look at the scores.
We've had 22 scores this week, which is a good healthy number, with the first submission from Dan AF90 after he saw my post on Reddit. And we've got returns from A. Creighton, who last played on Dodonpachi, Blue Yak, who dipped his toe in last season, and Pearl, who we didn't see last season, but who you'll know is a bit of a shmup specialist. Finally, with a special mention, we have a return from Andrew, Sick Boy Low. He's been absent for 2 seasons, but I'm sure we're all glad to see him back, being our winner of the previous 4. In 16th, we have our new player Dan. In 14th is the returning Blue Yak, not far ahead. In 10th is Mark, and beyond him is close all the way to 4th, with the returning Pearl in 9th, My Retro Tech in 8th, and a good effort from Retro Arcade Challenge in 7th. Graham is in an uncharacteristic 6th, just behind Leagsy in 5th, and me just ahead. Our top 3 is made up of the returning A. Creighton in 3rd, being the first into the 300,000s. Big Juffer has done well for 2nd, and you can see his run on YouTube. But taking the first win on his return, and maybe no surprises to anyone given we all know he's a Gradius fan, is Andrew Sick Boy Low. The only person in the 400,000s, this was a great performance on this tough game. Here is the first appearance of the score distribution. For anyone new to seeing this, we have various bins of the scores on the x-axis, and the numbers of people in each bin. For a regular game with a linear scoring system, you'd expect to see a normal distribution. However, depending on the game, we sometimes see a range of distributions. We could also see whether the leader has significantly separated themselves from the pack, or whether things are close at the top. Here we have what looks like a bimodal distribution. We have a cluster of folks on the left at around 110,000, a bit of a gap, and then another grouping of the lower half of our top 10 between 2 and 250,000. Andrew was on the right as expected, and he's in his own bin, but not hugely separated from the pack, showing it was a strong, but not one of the crazy dominant performances that we've seen in the past. Now we have the difficulty curve. This plot has people's scores on the log scale on the y-axis, and then each score plotted in increasing order, evenly spread over the x-axis. Steep sections are parts of the game that are likely fairly easy. Plateaus are where multiple people have got stuck, likely at similar points. Here we see a steep climb initially, which levels out, corresponding to that first peak of folks we see in the first plot. The curve then steepens a little to the next plateau, corresponding to the second peak, before rising once more to the top, showing that there are at least 2 significant barriers in this game. One around the Dancing Lady and the Maze level 3, and then another at level 4. Beyond that, there seems to be the opportunity to score again. And finally, the progress over the week. We have the time on the x-axis, and the scores on the y-axis, with a separate line for everyone who's taken part. Initially it was Colin who was the first to post a competitive score, which was beaten by me, then Juff took the lead, and I moved things on again. Our eventual 3rd place finisher A. Creighton then made a big step, before Andrew pushed things on again. He then jumped up again after a couple of days, with a score that no one was able to match, and increased it again on day 5, which didn't prove necessary, and the closest person, Juff, was 100,000 points away from his score. We can see when people were playing too. There is usually a flurry of activity to begin with, then we see multiple score increases around the midweek, before another chunk of submissions at the end. So, with 1990 done, our next year is 1991, and I've had 18 games sent to me. There wasn't much consensus on the choices, which is good from my perspective. No game got more than 2 votes, and those that got 2 were The Simpsons, Magical Crystals, Bomberman and Street Fighter 2. After taking that win on his return, Andrew's choice of Street Fighter is trebled, which gives it 4 out of 22 chances of appearing. Bomberman was my selection, so I'm hoping for that. Let's set things going and see what we get. There we go, it's like, oh, it's just stopped. Okay, so Colin's got a choice. So he was lucky last season with a couple of choices, and so he got The Simpsons. So this was also chosen by Bob, so this is a classic, another from Konami actually, a beat 'em up featuring The Simpsons. So yeah, I'll go make a short video and be back in a sec.
Is that a challenge?
This week's game is The Simpsons, a side-scrolling beat-em-up from 1991. That's back-to-back games from Konami, and a rather different style of game to Parodius that we've just had. Konami were pretty active around this time, with a lot of great games. I don't know how good a high-score challenge game this will be, but it's a pretty iconic one for a few reasons. Firstly, the IP. This was licensed early in the life of The Simpsons, but obviously its popularity massively increased, which brought appeal much beyond those interested in video games. Secondly, the cab is very notable for its 4-player control panel and bright colours, definitely eye-catching in the arcade. The game also has a bit of a story, which we've just seen. Maggie catches a diamond dropped by Smithers and is kidnapped. The aim of the game is to rescue Maggie, playing as one of the remaining 4 members of the family. The footage I recorded here is of the 4-player world ROM, but after some reading, I think we used the 2-player Japanese ROM, which came out later and featured a number of gameplay enhancements, including the ability to restore your health beyond the initial amount, and the atomic bomb power-ups that clear the screen. The scores are also multiplied by 100, so it should be obvious which version you've got. For next week, please send me some game suggestions from 1992. I'm currently torn between Bomberman World, Golden Axe The Revenge of Death Adder, and Puyo Puyo. So I hope you'll enjoy playing some Simpsons this week, and I'll be back next week with the scores. See you then.